Welcome to the Law and Crime Network. I'm Angelica Spanos. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We have a lot to get to today, and as always, we are going to bring you the latest on today's biggest trials. All right, so that was one of the responding officers to the shooting in Florida. Let's talk about this. Judge Ashley Willcott is with us today. Judge Ashley, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me today.
So we just heard that police officer in this trial in general. There are a lot of people involved. There are a lot of moving parts here, and it's kind of complicated. It's a little complex. How does all of this sort of play into what we have here in this trial?
I agree with you. It's very complex. I'm assuming it's chaotic. So you have a Super Bowl party. You have a few people seated around, or people seated around a fire pit right in the backyard. Then there's an eyewitness testimony that states 3 individuals came in wearing masks, opening fire. So you have multiple guns from the description. You've got someone who was shot and killed on the scene who has a gun in his waistband. Then you have this defendant, right? So this defendant is found actually by his car, a BMW, and he's been shot. And they say forensics are going to show that the gun that shot him is the same one that shot the 3 individuals right around the fire pit. And then you have testimony that he was in a Honda that belonged to someone else that left the scene, and they found his DNA along with guns and other things in that Honda. My point being, it's pretty convoluted, and I think this police officer we just heard testify, his testimony's right on when he says, you know, the guy's not really talking. I'm trying to get this information to tell him as much as I can about what they're going to encounter when they go in the house.
They also bring in Vorpagel, who I guess owned the house and who was hosting these people at his house and at this gathering or party. Then we find out that he has already pleaded guilty to firearm charges after the shooting, and that police searched his house. He admitted to dealing drugs and selling guns. So where does he come into all of this? Because that part also to me is a little confusing.
Right. Well, and my understanding is he was one of the 3 shooters allegedly, but he's also going to testify at this trial. Now, remember, in addition to him, there's also an alleged perpetrator that the police have declined to interview or not interviewing, from my understanding. And I think there's some finger pointing saying that that other person was actually the shooter.
All right, so again, that was Joseph McStay's brother. You hear him angry, you know, talking about how he directed some of his aggression toward, you know, the man that was found guilty of killing his brother and his family. And Judge Ashley, you know, when you listen to that, what do you think of all that?
So first of all, you know, he just made it, he summed it up in 2 words. And if I were the one making the closing remarks as a counsel for the defense for mitigating, for the prosecution in this case, I would say, for what? Exactly what he just said on the stand. Killing this family for what? The financial motive that the prosecution put forward is not that great amount of money compared to sometimes, you know, millions. So for what? Why did they get killed? The other thing, Angelica, I'd like to share is, in my experience, this is pretty typical testimony for a sentencing hearing, to hear from the victims of the deceased, in this case, an entire family of 4 with 2 young children, to explain, you know, it's not just they've lost a family member, whether it's a brother, an uncle, a son. It's that they lost the entire family, and that it has impacts beyond the emotional, beyond the grief, also the financial, the confusion of why did this happen, for what? All of those things play in convincing a jury that he should receive the death penalty.
Absolutely. All right, Judge Ashley, thank you. Now, at the end of that, you heard him say that the murders of the McStays over money and gambling were a joke. Now, through the prosecution after that actually says that the statement was made in an attempt to move on the defense, and the defense made an objection outside of the presence at the jury at the end of the day. Watch that. All right, so of course the jury is going to be deliberating about the death penalty for this. But before we get to that, Judge Ashley, I want to ask you your opinion about this. Many people are saying this, they were kind of surprised and shocked that they did come down as guilty in this, just because there was too much reasonable doubt. The state didn't prove anything well. What do you tell those people? What's your reaction to that?
Okay, so A, I agree. But B, listen, as a judge, I completely believe in our justice system. I see it work the way it's supposed to and well and convict the right people many, many, many times. Having said that, for those naysayers who say, listen, there was reasonable doubt, how could the jury do this? That is the reason for our appeal system, so that if counsel determines there was reasonable doubt or there were errors that were made that are appealable, he can file an appeal for an appellate court to make those decisions. So we weren't there sitting in the jury box hearing the evidence directly as they did. They obviously found no reasonable doubt.
All right, Judge Ashley, thank you. We have to take a break, but coming up afterwards, we're going to move into the penalty phase. This time in South Carolina, Timothy Jones Jr. is facing the death penalty for murdering his children. We'll take you live to that courtroom after the break.